Hey everyone, and welcome back to another MallDoc. In today's episode, we're back in the Southeast, where we're going to witness the end of an era in Nashville, Tennessee, as its final dead mall closes its doors for redevelopment on the north side of the city. That's right, we're visiting the Rivergate Mall in Goodlettsville, Tennessee in mid-July 2025, just weeks before it's shuttered for good due to the mall's imminent demolition. Despite learning of Rivergate's existence years ago and being in the area many times, I never did get around to filming it, and at a certain point, I almost thought I'd miss it. However, here we are, at the last dead mall standing in Davidson County, and if you don't count Stones River down in Murfreesboro, the Nashville Metro as a whole. This is going to be an epic one, so sit back, relax, and let's take one final trip to the Rivergate Mall.
Tonight, the Rivergate Mall is finally closing its doors after 54 years.
For many, it was a childhood staple, a hangout spot after school, the location of your first job, maybe the place you went to shop for life milestones. News 2's Alicia Wimberly joining us live.
As we do a bit of a perimeter drive, I want to briefly touch on the history of malls in Nashville and where Rivergate stands in that history. Nashville's first mall was the Harding Mall, which opened in 1966 on the south side of the city on Nolensville Road. It was soon followed in 1967 by the 100 Oaks Mall, just a few miles north in Berry Hill. The opening of these two shopping centers led to the opening of many more malls in the Nashville metro, a number that peaked at 9 malls operating simultaneously in the region in the early 2000s. But back to the 60s, both Harding and 100 Oaks were great places to shop, but neither were big enough to truly cater to shoppers on the north side of the city, which was still lacking in closed shopping. That all changed on April 21st, 1968, when Retail Planning Corp., a subsidiary of the Atlanta-based Cousins Properties, announced their plans for a brand new mall to be built at the corner of 2 Mile Pike and Gallatin Pike in the town of Goodlettsville, to be known as Rivergate Mall. Over the coming months, studies were held and ground was eventually broken on what was set to be Nashville's greatest mall yet.
This was Sears.
The first anchor to sign a lease with the new mall was the Nashville-based Kane Sloan department store, who would construct their third location at the mall. Soon after, during a ceremonial groundbreaking in downtown Nashville on February 19, 1970, Kastner Knott and JCPenney signed on as Rivergate's second and third anchors. Initially, the mall had a projected cost of $20 million and an estimated opening date of fall 1970 that would later be pushed back to late 1971. Excitement grew throughout Middle Tennessee as construction continued and locals eagerly awaited what Rivergate had in store. By May 1971, the grand opening had been set for October, with 60% of spaces leased in the future shopping center. As the day neared, all eyes turned to Goodlettsville as Nashville's latest and greatest mall prepared to open. At long last, on October 6, 1971, Rivergate Mall opened its doors for the first time, with a ribbon-cutting ceremony held at 9:30 a.m. Shoppers were greeted with over 800,000 square feet of 70s shopping paradise, including more than 40 inline tenants, such as McCrory's, Morrison's Cafeteria, Zales Jewelers, Walden Books, and Camelot Records, to name a few. Kastner Knott and Kane Sloan anchored the east and west ends of the mall, with JCPenney set to occupy a large space in the center a few months later in March of 1972. Rivergate Mall throughout featured an aesthetic customary of the time, with brick floors, warm tones, and towering ceilings in the anchor courts. At opening, it was the largest mall in the state of Tennessee, immediately setting it apart from any possible competition. Rivergate truly was a stunning mall, and as shoppers flooded in day after day, it was set for a very successful future. On March 1st, 1972, JCPenney would indeed open their Rivergate Mall location, filling the last of the mall's 3 anchor spaces. Despite being brand new, Rivergate would soon see its first expansion, coming in the form of 22 new shops, totaling 55,000 square feet. The expansion was designed by the Atlanta-based Thompson, Ventulet, Steinbach Associates, and also featured new drive-up canopies and entrances. Completed on November 16, 1978, the additions didn't actually add any additional square footage to the mall, instead making use of underutilized existing space and giving shoppers even more reason to go to the mall. In 1978, Rivergate saw its first real competition arrive, when Hickory Hollow Mall opened in the Nashville suburb of Antioch, about 25 miles away. This did little to harm the mall, however, which was still thriving. Into the 80s, Rivergate was still North Nashville's premier shopping destination, and one of the greatest malls in the entire state. The mall would sail through the decade with little struggle, seeing an acquisition by J.W. O'Connor & Co. in 1984. By the late 80s, parts of the now 15-year-old mall had begun to feel dated, which is why, on July 24, 1986, a new expansion to the mall was announced in the Tennessean, which would add an entire new concourse to Rivergate's north side. The expansion was centered around a brand new 12-stall food court underneath a 50-foot glass atrium. It would also add 44 new retail shops and see the addition of a new Sears Roebuck & Company store. These additions were completed in 1989 at a final cost of $22 million and pushed the mall over the 1 million square foot mark. The mall now also had a Dillard's, which had been converted from Kane Sloan in 1987 following the sale of the chain by its owners, Allied Department Stores. Now with 4 department stores, a food court, and over 100 other shops, Rivergate Mall was truly thriving more than ever before. Throughout the 1990s, the retail environment in Nashville underwent significant changes. Mall competition increased significantly with the opening of Church Street Center, Bellevue Center, and Cool Springs Galleria in 1989, 90, and 91, respectively, bringing the number of enclosed malls in the Nashville metro to 7. In a region of just over 1 million people, malls were having to make changes to stand out and remain relevant in the rapidly changing environment, something Rivergate had done well so far. But as the mall passed 20 years old, more uncertainty was growing in its future, and no one could have predicted what was about to come. On May 18, 1995, a severe weather outbreak unfolded across the southern U.S., resulting in 15 confirmed tornadoes in Middle Tennessee. At 11:30 a.m. on May 18th, a tornado touched down near Goodlettsville, quickly intensifying to F2 strength. As the tornado tracked eastward, it approached and plowed through the Sears anchor and northern concourse of Rivergate Mall. Part of the mall's roof collapsed, resulting in 19 injuries and the damage of over a dozen businesses. Luckily, no fatalities were associated with this tornado, but significant repairs would have to be made to the Sears building in particular to rebuild from the damage. Rivergate would bounce back quickly from the tornado, and on June 24, 1998, it was announced that, along with numerous other malls in the area, Rivergate Mall would be acquired by the Chattanooga-based CBL and Associates Properties for a grand total of $247.4 million for all the malls combined. That same year, Kastner Knott became Profits due to Dillard's acquisition of Mercantile Stores and the sale of that location to Saks Incorporated since there was already Dillard's at Rivergate. CBL would waste no time in bringing Rivergate back into the spotlight, kicking off a $5 million overhaul in March of 1999. This renovation had one primary goal: to update the aesthetics that Rivergate had largely kept since opening nearly 30 years earlier. The dark tiles and bricks of the 70s would be removed and replaced with carpeting and drywall, bringing the mall to roughly how it appears today. Just in time too, since as the new millennium arrived, the aging Rivergate was about to face its greatest competition yet.
We saw one at the Galleria sunset. Here's another.
On May 11th, 2000, the brand new Opry Mills Mall opened on the northeast side of Nashville, just 20 minutes away from Rivergate Mall. Developed by the Mills Corporation, Opry Mills featured over 185 stores and services, along with entertainment and restaurants. The Mills was unlike anything Nashville had ever seen, and it quickly took a toll on its surrounding competing malls. Back at Rivergate, Profits became Hecht's in 2001, and finally Macy's in 2006. Linens and Things also opened as a minor addition in 2003. Through the 2000s, the mall continued to have a steady stream of shoppers. However, its decline was becoming increasingly apparent, and things were only getting worse. In 2008, the Streets of Indian Lake, a new outdoor shopping center, opened in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just 7 miles away from Rivergate. The new development began to pull tenants and shoppers away from the mall, which continued its inevitable struggle. As the decade turned once again, and Rivergate Mall turned 40 years old, the southern concourse of the mall was redeveloped in an attempt to draw in more shoppers, into a party and entertainment venue known as Incredible Dave's. Yeah, that's not a knockoff of anything. Incredible Dave's opened in 2011 to little fanfare, and soon after, CBL decided that it was time to pull the plug. On September 9th, 2013, CBL announced that they had sold Rivergate Mall, along with 2 other malls in their portfolio, to an offshore investor, and that the mall would now be managed by Atlanta-based Hendon Properties. Hendon took control of the mall soon after, and only time could tell if they would be able to revive the now certainly dying Rivergate.
This place, Pyramids Cafe, is a Nashville staple. They've been like in every mall here. Opry Mills, Cool Springs, Hickory Hollow, I think, had one. Yeah, no, I know Hickory Hollow had one. Rivergate, I think it's closed, but they would have had one at some point. I think Cool Springs might be the only one left, and Opry Mills, but yeah, sad.
Despite the optimism with Incredible Dave's, the venue was ultimately a failure, closing down just 3 years after opening in 2014. This left the mall worse off than it was before, since rather than concourses, it now had a giant empty anchor space on the south side. Now, I'd be lying if I said that Rivergate didn't have some life in it during this time. However, throughout the 2010s, tenants slowly left, as the mall fell further into obscurity. In 2015, Smart Buys Furniture opened in the empty former Dave space, and in 2016, a brand new Guitar Center was announced for the mall. While Guitar Center would go on to be moderately successful, little did anyone know that, when it opened on January 19, 2017, it would be the last major addition to ever come to Rivergate Mall. As the 2010s drew to a close, Rivergate Mall was leeching tenants, and it would take a major blow in December 2018, when it was announced that Sears would be closing at the mall along with 80 other locations nationwide. The location closed in March, leaving a vast empty anchor at the North Concourse that would never again be filled. Less than a year later, in January of 2020, Macy's announced the closure of its location in the mall. The store closed by March, leaving another massive dead space in the mall, just in time for the pandemic. COVID-19 decimated Rivergate, and by the time the world had bounced back, the mall was on life support. Around 2022, Smart Buys closed, leaving Rivergate Mall with 3 empty anchors and very little hope for the future.
The decor, like the carpet and stuff, may be very 2000s from when they redid it, but the high ceilings is very 70s when the mall opened. You can also see the neon up along the edges. That doesn't, I don't know when the last time it was turned on was, but that's also very 70s, 80s mall.
By some miracle, Rivergate Mall limped through the 2020s, losing tenants left and right and leaving entire concourses completely devoid of life. The mall was listed for sale in 2024, but nothing seemed official until May 6, 2025, when the Nashville Metro Council approved a plan to demolish the mall and redevelop it into an outdoor mixed-use space. As Rivergate entered its final days, the community came together to say goodbye to their beloved mall. On June 20th, 2025, hundreds of locals showed up for one last cruise at the mall, where they walked the concourses and cruised the mall's parking lot. At one point, I was nervous that I'd miss my opportunity to visit Rivergate, but on July 11th, I was lucky enough to take a trip to the mall for the footage you've been watching. On its deathbed, the mall staggered through the remainder of 2025, losing its final national tenant somewhere along the way. On New Year's Eve, the final interior store shuttered, leaving the mall 100% empty, except for Dillard's, JCPenney, and Guitar Center. Even though this seemed like the end, for some reason, Rivergate Mall opened its doors on January 1st, surviving on a miracle into 2026. For a month and a half, the mall opened daily for people to walk the concourses one last time and say their final goodbyes. Of course, all good things must come to an end. And on February 13th, 2026, after 54 years of operation, Rivergate Mall was sold to developer Maris for $33 million, and, with final goodbye said, shuttered to the public for the final time.
Local Nashville landmark closing its doors after 54 years, leaving behind a legacy of memories for a lot of folks here in Middle Tennessee.
For more than 50 years, the Rivergate Mall in Goodlettsville is officially closed. The mall made the announcement on social media over the weekend.
If I said it was closed, I was wrong. Pyramids is still open here in the food court, and I got some hummus and pita just because I'm starving. I didn't eat breakfast, and also, it's iconic. You know I had to. This is it for the Rivergate Mall on year 54 since opening, in just weeks likely before its closure. I made my first and final visit, and we're saying goodbye as the echo of children's laughter. That is terrifying. Why?
As I write this script in February 2026, the future of the Rivergate Mall site is becoming more and more solidified. The new owner, Maris, plans to demolish the majority of the existing mall, with the exception of Dillard's, JCPenney, and Guitar Center, which are expected to remain open, at least as construction begins. The new $450 million mixed-use development will feature housing, retail, and restaurants, and is expected to open in phases through the early 2030s. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching this video. Rivergate Mall holds a special place in my heart, as it represents one of the final remnants of the old part of the city that's changed so much in the past few decades. I am so grateful that I was able to visit Rivergate in its final days and bring you guys with me. My next video will be MallDoc 16, where I hope you'll join me on an unforgettable trip I made a few months ago, north through the cold and snow, to see what just might be America's most iconic dead mall that you can still visit today. That's right, I am absolutely stoked to bring you with me to the Galleria at Pittsburgh Mills in the next video. It's going to be incredible. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I want to thank you once again for coming with me to say goodbye to the incredible dead mall that is Rivergate Mall. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you at the next mall.